Welcome to Malts and Music, a brand new podcast brought to you by the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. My name is Vic Galloway. I'm a broadcaster, author, musician, and lifelong music fan. I'm also a massive whiskey fan. This podcast is inspired by my own experience of pairing up 12 single cask malt whiskey flavour profiles with 12 music genres. I thought, let's do something similar. Get some creative people to pair up 5 tracks with 5 delicious whiskies. We also talk about their lives, their careers, their experiences, and go off on various tangents. Enjoy. Slange.
Norman Blake, welcome to Malts and Music.
Well, hi there, Vic. Thanks for having me along. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, it's great to see you and to chat about music and obviously this delicious whiskey.
Yeah.
How did you get on with the challenge, the 5 tracks and the 5 drams?
Well, yeah, I mean, I did match some songs with the whiskies, and I think very much suggested, or my choices were suggested by partly the greater wisdom of the people who have kind of come up with the names of these whiskies and with the descriptions of them. I think that helped me with my musical choices. Because I like whiskey, but I don't know an awful lot about it. But I do.
Well, no, I'm the same. I mean. Working for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society and doing these podcasts and originally pairing up the 12 flavour profiles with 12 music genres was completely new to me. How did you find it though? Because a lot of people would be like, oh, it took me a while.
Yeah, it's really a difficult thing to do, isn't it? It's quite abstract. I mean, really, it's really abstract actually.
Yeah.
It's like I don't tend to match music with food or whatever in a way, or any other kind of product, or so it's a sort of new thing for me, as I'm sure it is for everyone that is doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
After the first one, I think you find your feet a bit, and then you're like, oh, right, now I can get into the swing of this.
I'd imagine that I'm going to try and make these whiskies fit my, choices, in whatever way I can.
Well,
so
it's going to be like that, isn't it? You're a massive music fan, and you'll revert to certain kinds of genres or music that you already love, and accompany it with a dram.
That's great.
And what kind of whiskey do you go for if you were picking something off a shelf in a bar?
I like a Speyside.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to be my favourites.
Mm-hmm.
Something quite light in a way. Nothing, not massively into heavily peated ones or anything like that. I don't think. But
in this sample pack, I don't think there was anything particularly peaty, was there?
No, there wasn't actually. No, there wasn't. There were, nothing too heavy. And actually, I did like them all, and they were all very different, which I obviously expected. But
Yes. I love the little sample packs, and we've got our tasting.
Well, yes,
notes
it's something
well.
you really, never really get to sample different whiskies. Normally when you have whiskey, you stick to the same one, right? That's kind of how it works. But so it's interesting when you get to taste a few in a short space of time. That you can really notice the differences. So,
should we get stuck in? Should we start with dram number 1?
Okie dokie. Are we in for Adventures by the Sea?
Yes, we're going for Adventures by the Sea.
Okay.
Which is a Highlands. 2005 was when it was distilled.
Mm-hmm.
Bourbon barrel as well.
Yep.
Cask number 42.54. So that's the 42nd distillery, 54.
Okay. Oh, right. I see that.
That's how those numbers work.
Okay.
Let's
right,
go.
Great.
Let's pour one in.
Here we go. Right. Put that there.
And while we're doing that, I'll just do some of the tasting notes here. My eyesight's getting a little bit worse. Maybe it's all this whiskey.
Oh yeah, perhaps.
We felt the need to sharpen an axe with a whetstone, and inevitably an accident happened as we opened the first aid box. All we saw were salted toffees, ginger cake, and Turkish delight. On it goes, but I love the descriptions. This one, as you've just mentioned, Adventures by the Sea. It's an oily and coastal tasting profile.
Yeah.
Let's have a sip. Slange.
Good to
see you, Norman.
Likewise.
Oh.
Cask strength, 61.6% volume.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah, wow.
And we should say that we are recording this in an afternoon as well.
We are recording in an afternoon.
There's daylight out there.
It's very nice though. I mean, it really is. It's nice.
Extraordinary.
I tend to have whiskey with my dad of a Sunday. My dad likes a blend. He's always just gone for a blend, and it can be a number of various ones. My sister used to live above the Justerini in Brooks Place, and just off Rose Street, I think it is, many years ago. So we had that from time to time.
Right, yeah. Oh yeah, well, so oily and coastal profile. I love these. Like they're really suggestive in terms of the profile and the sort of tarry ropes, oysters, marmite, olive oil, harbour walls, beach bonfire, salted caramel.
Right, yeah, I totally get the oiliness too. Actually, you know. Yeah, and when you know, again, the name suggests me coastal. I was kind of thinking some kind of turbulent sort of seascape. Turner seascape there too, you know, which was a kind of suggested the music that I chose for this in a way.
So what have you gone for with this one?
I think I've gone for the Gang of Four. I found that essence rare.
Yeah.
And I think it was more because it's you know, I was thinking of something that was maybe, I don't know, you know,
propulsive.
Yeah, and something a little aggressive, you know, but you know, controlled aggression. And I actually, funnily enough, I hadn't. I don't know why that sprung to mind. I hadn't played that song in a long time. But
off Entertainment, 1979.
Yeah, great album.
Were you into it?
I was at the time. Yeah, I was. I really liked it a lot. But it's really stood the test of time in terms of sonically. It's really brilliant. It's really focused, tight. You know, the drums are really dry. It's right in your face. You know, and it's really great. Like really sophisticated in terms of the arrangement. The playing's brilliant. They're really tight band.
And hugely influential. When you hear new bands now that sound almost identical.
Yeah, you do. That's, I guess more so. I mean, I guess a lot of people when Franz Ferdinand were around first would sort of, you know, talk about them
that
being
jagged guitar.
The angular sort of spiky guitar thing, which is a kind of Gang of, you know, I found the essence has totally got that spikiness in the guitar.
But then there's funk to it as well.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there was that thing that a lot of it's kind of, because Gang of Four sort of post-punk, you know. I mean, they're at the tail end of punk, really. When if you're thinking about the Pistols, Buzzcocks period, they're just a little bit later.
Yeah.
And then if you think of people, their contemporaries. You think of the pop group and people like that, and they were all in it, funk, dub
and funk, and
that was definitely
disco.
coming through in the music, you know, and bands like Maximum Joy, all of that kind of post-punk thing. There was the punk thing, but there was also this funk thing going on there too, and the reggae thing, which the Clash had kind of brought along with that's really how I kind of get into reggae.
Yes,
listening
to
reggae
think it was
through the Clash, you know,
and through the Specials and
the Specials, totally,
and that's Madness and everything. That's how I sort of got into reggae as well, but especially the Clash, because initially when I heard Armageddon Time by the Clash, I thought it was kind of their song.
Me
which
too.
You would,
and then you discover it's a cover, but that was, and I was a real fan of the Clash, you know, and they kind of incorporated in the music, even sort of White Man and Hammersmith Pallies.
Yeah,
got that sort of feel. So anyway, that was. Going back to the Gang of Four thing, that was it's this sort of spiky, propulsive thing, but it's focused and.
I can see what you mean. Like pairing up. I mean, obviously, like as you mentioned earlier on, you're taking a bit of a journey every time.
Yeah,
it's like if someone pairs food with whiskey, you don't always agree with them. You know, it might be like, well, actually, I would have had spaghetti bolognese with that.
Yeah,
or
of
whatever
course.
it was.
Yeah, totally that. It's a difficult thing. Again, like I say, there's inevitably the names of the whiskies are going to suggest. Something that kind of worked for me for sure, and also I did note that the colour coding on the bottles too. So I was sort of drawn. So I maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe we should have tasted it blind. Maybe it's best to taste it blind without looking at the.
I think, as you said, it's quite an esoteric sort of approach. Pairing something like music with something that you taste. I mean, that's why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah,
obviously, it's an interesting to do, and people are really rising to the challenge and enjoying it. But it is an odd thing. But it does. This isn't a sweet, caramelly kind of whiskey at all. This is quite spiky. And
it really is. There's a space in there that is spiky. Yeah.
Yeah, and. You're a songwriter, you're a rock star, Norman. But you're a fan as well.
Yeah.
Do you? What's your preferred medium streaming, downloading, vinyl, CD?
I do a bit of all of it, really, but I still like buying vinyl. Always, if a record comes out, I'll always buy it in vinyl. And with the band, the band Teenage Fanclub that I play with, we've always had a vinyl release for everything. So singles, albums, everything that we've put out has had a vinyl release. Even at the period in the sort of early 2000s when a lot of people stopped making, we're just making CDs, we always did a vinyl issue of that. And it's interesting that, over the years, the production run would get smaller because we're like, okay, how many are we going to sell? Because people talk about things shipping gold and returning platinum.
Right, okay,
10,000, we'll get 8,000 sent back. So what's been interesting over the last couple of years is that the production runs are bigger. So we're selling more proportionately. The big thing now is vinyl. We still sell CDs. I actually really like CDs.
I do too.
And it's funny
I bought the Endless Arcade on CD actually. I like CDs in the car.
It's a great format.
I think
Brilliant.
It's coming back as well.
I think it is too. They're actually becoming collectible as well. CDs, good because especially the earlier CDs were they were well made, and it's just a really good thing. A CD, like so, you can stick it in the car. It's durable, You can't quite smear. I remember thinking Tomorrow's World when we were talking. But this new thing is CD, and you can
smear jam on it,
sand and all. Well, you can't quite do that. But although I think you can get little machines that can scrape the top layer of plastic off to
make it sound
to
good
make them work again.
Right? Because I have a couple of CDs that are scratched.
Oh yeah,
I love vinyl and I love CD, but I stream and download as well.
I do all of those things. I think we all do. The convenience of streaming is brilliant. The fact that they all obviously as a musician, I have issues with the way that we are being remunerated by the streaming companies. It's clearly not fair. I think especially we can still go out and tour. And we still have revenue streams for our band, but for young bands, it's really tough.
Trying to establish yourself when people don't know you and they're not going to take a risk and buy a piece of vinyl, or perhaps they will, but there'll be 300 or 400 of them rather than enough.
And what happens then is that, especially for young bands, like so we can do this as a living, right? I would say this is what I do, right? I'm a musician, but if you're 20, 20-year-olds, and you've got a band. And the only way that you can make money is to tour as a musician these days, right? Unless you're really famous and you can sell it. But okay. So the problem that you run into then is that, some people will be working, and they can't get time off work to tour. And you have to try and coordinate that, or you just have to play gigs sporadically.
Yeah, and you can't build up a momentum.
And you can't build any momentum up, and you can't commit to touring. So you may be asked to go on tour with a bigger band who make you get some exposure doing that, and you can't do it.
Yeah.
So it's tough,
Yeah, absolutely. And talking of young bands, new bands, is there anyone? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but is there any new artists that have grabbed you recently that you would recommend anyone?
Do you know, I'm not so great on new artists because I think partly because I'm almost 56,
right?
And it's partly that I'm just not as good at keeping up with contemporary music as I used to. But we have played with some younger bands over the last couple of years, and we played with Robert Forster's son's band, the
Goonsacks,
and they were really great actually. I really liked them.
They definitely sound. They've got a bit of the go-betweens in them.
They have. Yeah. I mean, I suppose if you grow up with that, and you would be. That would.
I've done on my BBC show. I've done a kind of Goonsacks into the go-betweens segue.
Yeah.
Which is quite fun. I'm not sure they really approve of that, but. Well, I thought it sounded quite good.
It's funny, the last time we were over in Australia, they played with us, a couple of shows with us, and Robert was down, because we know Rob, we toured with the Go-Betweens years ago.
Right.
So it was just great seeing Robert being around as the dad, whose boy was on stage. It was pretty amazing, and I think, he was enjoying it, he's enjoying their success, I think, so they were great. And I'm trying to think who else. So I do my best to keep up with things, but inevitably it's one of those questions that whenever I get asked that, I've kind of have this kind of big white blank space.
I do it for a living.
I know you do it professionally,
and I still get those. Someone goes, "What's the best band in Fife at the moment?" And I'm like, "Fife bands."
Yeah, and then you're kind of like, But it is great, and actually that's a great thing to do for what you do for a living, Vic, is that you do get to hear great music. Pluggers, people say, "Oh, you should check this out."
Yeah.
People will know. People will have an idea of what you like already. Vic Galloway is going to like that, and they'll send it off to you. So that's a great way for you to discover things that you will probably like because people will be aware that you're going to like them. If that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. No, I feel very lucky to be able to play tunes and on the radio or match them with whiskey for that matter.
Yeah.
I'm going to try a little bit of water.
Yeah, that's a good idea, isn't it?
The last.
Yeah.
Because it does change the sort of flavour and
do you know, if my mum was here, she would come through and say, do you want some shortbread? that was whenever my dad gets whiskey, she said, do you want some shortbread?
To go with it, to soak it up.
I think that's the idea.
So Sunday whiskey drinking with Dad. That's
Sunday evening.
Yeah,
we wouldn't start at 2:00
no.
like we're doing today, but Sunday evening we'd have a. I see this thing. It's amazing. It is amazing when you add water to the whiskey.
It's just completely softened it. Hasn't
really
it?
softens it. Yeah.
It almost feels less spiky and a little bit more rounded.
But it does show you the kind of depth of it in a way that you could, depending on how much water you add to it, you know. So you can get different whiskey with every amount of water that you add to it. You know, it's just interesting that so people will have their preference in that way. That it's not quite like how dark your tea is, with, how much milk you put in it, but it's along those lines.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And some people put a block of ice or two in a whiskey as well.
Yeah. Now, what's the rationale with that? Because you imagine as the ice cube melts, right, it softens the taste.
It dilutes the whiskey bit by bit, and obviously it makes it cold as well, which is not necessarily the way it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, each to their own. I'm not a kind of snob about this kind of stuff. Right. I realise that some people. I mean, I'm sure whiskey fanatics would sort of throw you out of the whiskey society.
Would there be an optimum temperature to drink whiskey at?
Well, that's weird because drinking whiskey in Jamaica will be different from drinking whiskey in the Highlands of Scotland.
Yeah, room temperature is going to be a bit higher than if someone says room temperature or whatever. But I don't know. It's like anyway.
Well, there's dram number one for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. But it's quite a
me too, but it's
quite a spiky one to start with, but delicious.
Excellent. Yeah.
So moving on to dram number 2, which is
the angelic fruit mischievous spice,
which is sweet, fruity, and mellow tasting profile. Read a little bit of the card here.
And it's to Speyside.
It's a Speyside. 17 years. It was distilled in September 2003. A rainbow of fruit arched over us, scattering delightful aromas of citrus, juicy mango, pineapple, and soft fruit compote. Also honey, caramel, condensed milk, and vanilla. Well, that already suggests lots of amazing tasting.
It certainly does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Notes.
Distilled September 11th, 2003.
New glass.
Here we
put
go.
It in the old glass there.
Yep.
Love these glasses with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society.
Yeah, they're very nice, aren't they? So a little glass that way. So I'll just get the cap on there and.
Yep.
So here it is.
So let's nose this one. Oh, completely different already, isn't
much
it?
Much lighter, much milder, much.
Yeah, I'm going to go for it. Oh, far more mild and much sweeter.
But there's a very complex as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
there's a kick to it.
Yeah, there is for sure.
It's not the
which I wasn't expecting. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I thought it was going to be.
It was going to be much lighter in comparison to the first one. It is, but it's still got that punch.
Yeah, it has for sure. Yeah.
Mm.
And
so, you've paired. What have you paired this one?
17-year-old. Now, I think could this be a Captain Beefheart track?
It is Captain Beefheart and his magic band. Call on Me.
Yeah, something about this whiskey suggested California to me. I don't know why. West Coast sunshine, maybe the sunshine, the fruitiness of it. The kind of thing of like, So that was kind of where I was coming from with that. You can imagine the citrus groves in California or whatever. But for some reason it suggested this drink. Actually, it's an early Captain Beefheart thing. It's from their first album.
Safe as Milk.
Safe as Milk, yeah.
67?
Something like that, yeah.
And I really love Clear Spot and the Spotlight Kid, those two records.
Me too. I think Clear Spot could be my favourite Captain Beefheart record actually as well. I don't know if, but we when we were making our first album, that was a record that we listened to all the time.
Really?
Yeah, Clear Spot was a big influence on the band. I think on Raymond's guitar playing.
Yeah.
Raymond, the guy who plays guitar in our band.
Yeah.
That was a big influence in his style of play. But yeah, I've always been a fan of Captain Beefheart. I've realised that whenever I'm asked to talk about favourite records, I tend to come up with a Captain Beefheart track.
Yeah.
And I've even recently gotten into Trout Mask Replica.
I was going to go down that.
It took me a long time to get that, but I can't. It's not my favourite record that they made, but I can sort of listen to more than I could years ago. I found it.
Are you into jazz? Do you like and sort of more kind of atonal, kind of skronking,
Ayler or whatever, that kind
pop?
of thing? Yeah. I am actually. I can listen. I mean, I think I think I'm fairly open-minded when it comes to music. I think that I do like things that can be quite noisy, but things that are quite abstract. I mean, I suppose our band were, when people think of us, they think of sort of melodic pop music harmonies, but myself and Raymond, when we were younger, both liked Throbbing Gristle a lot,
Right.
The aesthetic of that and the music as well, actually, because of course there is a lot of music in that, which I think was mostly made by Chris Carter.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we did like sort of abstract things too, and I still do. So I still.
Yeah, and I mean, when Teenage Fanclub kind of arrived, 89 and into 90 and so on, noisy alternative rock music was making a breakthrough, especially sort of American stuff. Yeah, and you were kind of like I don't know. You were kind of the UK equivalent.
We were definitely. I think we were definitely influenced by that. And you're right. It was American. The big thing in the UK at that time was where American bands were the coolest bands. Sonic Youth. If you want to be a bit more obscure than that, you would think about Big Black, Steve Albini's band. Actually, I went to see them in Newport in Wales. I'm friends with John Robb, as you are yourself, right?
Yeah, John Robb from Membranes.
Yeah, and so I was hanging out at John's flat in Manchester when I was, it must have been early 20s at the time. Me and my girlfriend had hitchhiked down, and we went with the Membranes down to Newport, and they were supporting Big Black.
I think Membranes were the first band that asked Albini to produce them or record them. Yeah, and
it could well have been that night. I mean, it could have been, because I think they hadn't played with them before. It was in Newport, Gwent or whatever, and they did that show. And I'd gotten to know the Membranes through Stephen Pastel was friends with John Robb, I think, because of fanzines and stuff like that. But great guy. And actually, for when we made the first Teenage Fanclub LP, we stayed at John Robb's in John Robb's sauna. I think I mentioned this to you before.
We've talked about this before, but for people who didn't hear that, describe that, because it's quite odd. Yeah,
John had this. It was kind of like a squat, pretty much. They had a flat they had in Manchester, a house, but on the roof of the house, there was the roof, I think, but it was covered in some way. There was a sauna, which wasn't working, non-functional sauna, but I had these benches, so you could sort of, sleep in them, which is what we did. And we were making our first album at Sweet 16 in Rochdale, which is Peter Hook's studio.
Does it still exist, that studio?
I don't think it does, actually. I think it's gone now.
So we move on to dram number 3, Norman. A Rustic Dance.
Oh, I think I remember what I chose for this now, actually. Rustic Dance. And actually, it was initially the name of I should definitely change my glass, in fact, before I do that.
Finish off dram number 2.
I'm not going to waste that.
No, definitely not.
A little palate cleanser there.
Yeah, absolutely. A little sip of water.
Well, yeah. Again, with the everything of the name suggested. Initially was the thing that suggested the piece of music, but then again also I guess the descriptor of it too. So again, so I looked at the Society's 12 flavour profiles, and this is a light and delicate.
Yes. No, this is a juicy oak and vanilla, this one.
Oh dear, I'm wrong. Yeah, that's my colour blindness. I don't have colour blindness in this, but just using that as an excuse. Okay, so juicy oaky and vanilla. Okay, here we go. So when it goes.
Yeah.
And actually, this is actually even a better descriptor for the piece of music that I've chosen. juicy oak, because there's possibly oak involved in the
music choice.
In the music choice, yeah.
So distilled March 2011, ex-bourbon barrel, second fill, and it's a Highland.
Now, are they all ex-bourbon barrels? I know that's a big thing that they all come over.
I think in today's tasting pack they are actually.
But is that quite? That's very common, isn't it?
I think so.
Bourbon
Yeah,
barrels,
it
that's
seems to be
the thing,
yeah.
isn't it? Are they,
or it can be a
you get the
sherry cask.
The sherry casks. Yeah, is the other thing. But yeah.
I'll try some of these. You've got the little tasting card that comes with with each dram in the tasting pack, and it says, the fresh nose evoked the French countryside, grass, chamomile, oak forest, and pear and apple orchards, eventually reaching a cider press, giving off citrusy, boozy notes of enticement. I love all that stuff. It's
enticement
great.
Enticement's a good word.
Enticement, yeah.
Well,
I'm being enticed to taste this one. The nose is nice. It's now immediately more sort of fruity.
It is for sure, yeah.
As you were saying, the last one we had still had a bit of a punch to it. It was sweet, fruity, and mellow.
It did. I'm trying to think.
I'm getting more fruit and more.
There's absolutely more fruit in this, yeah.
And the vanilla, obviously.
Yeah.
Some of the tasting notes here: oiled wood, toasted oak, coriander seed, pineapple sorbet.
Wow, it's amazing that the sort of the different things that people can sort of find in these in the flavour or whatever the taste.
Chocolate coated cherries, millionaire's shortbread.
Oh, that's good. So these are all very rich things, aren't they? But
having a sip. Oh, that's my favourite so far, I have to say.
It's lovely. It's very, very nice, isn't it? The rustic dance thing.
Yes.
Now, partly, and I think this whiskey does suit the music choice, actually. So I think the song that I chose for this was Willow's Song.
Yes.
Which is it's a track or song by Paul Giovanni, but it's from the Wicker Man soundtrack.
It's the kind of the centrepiece to the Wicker Man soundtrack.
It is indeed. There's a scene where Britt Ekland is. I'm hoping that people have seen the Wicker Man.
If not, you should check it out.
It's a great movie. But anyway, there's a scene where Britt Ekland is naked, and she's sort of doing this sort of seductive, enticing dance. There's a police officer on the other side of the wall.
Edward Woodward. Yeah.
And she's sort of she does this kind of sort of this dance, naked dance. I guess trying to entice him.
Yeah, it's very erotic. And
very
He's
erotic.
being driven mad by it.
Yeah, very erotic. And I guess it's a bit of a rustic dance in a way too, which matches the title of this. But yeah, and also I think that thing with the sort of juiciness of it and the oak.
Yeah. Is thought of the Wicker Man itself.
Exactly. That sort of sprung to mind when I sampled this whiskey.
And Magnet was a sort of band I think put together to make that soundtrack.
He was a New Yorker, Paul Giovanni, and he wrote the soundtrack. And the songs are very authentically Scottish, I think, actually.
Yeah.
They sound like traditional Scottish folk songs, but they're not. They're written by him. In the soundtrack, there are a couple of modified Scottish folk songs. But again, lyrically, it's a very strange film. I mean, it's difficult to describe in a couple of sentences. It was an absolute classic of British cinema, actually. I think it's highly regarded. But yeah, musically, it's great.
I looked into it a little bit because I had your choices in advance of us doing this, and obviously I know the film and I know the soundtrack. And it's not Britt Ekland actually singing the track. It's not. It's her miming to it, as it were.
Yeah, but I also looked into this because I knew we were doing this. Now I realised I didn't actually know who was singing it. So there are a couple of contenders, I think, actually.
I can't remember. Karen Every or something.
Rachel,
like
I think, is Rachel.
Okay, possibly, right.
Verney, I think. Rachel Verney, maybe.
Right, I'll defer to your better
Rachel Verney, I think. But some people think it's Annie Ross, Scottish singer, jazz singer. But I'm not sure who sang on the actual record.
Well, nerding out a little bit, I found out that one of the members of Magnet, I think they'd all been at music college together, or they sort of roughly knew each other. A guy called Peter Brewis went on to write a lot of comedy music, including the Chicken song for Spitting Image and its B-side, I've Never Met a Nice South African, which I remember at the time Spitting Image released that.
Well, that's
very
amazing.
Funny song.
I didn't know that at all. So that's
there you go. It's amazing how you can sort of go down a rabbit hole.
Well, I like to do that. It's amazing that all this information is available on the internet now.
Yeah.
In terms of and that's actually one thing you lose in streaming. We're talking about streaming earlier, but you lose that with streaming because you don't have the information that you would have if you bought a record. If that whole ritual of buying an album, getting it home, you would probably have an inner sleeve with the lyrics on it, all of the information about where it was recorded, the personnel, all of that stuff is missing from the streaming thing, and well, to me it's quite sad actually.
I agree. I obviously use streaming platforms, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc., like everyone. I mean, who doesn't now? If you've got access to a computer and you love music, you're gonna sit, especially maybe with a whiskey or two, you'll sit and, like, my girlfriend and I will just go have a wee nip of something and then just play tunes. And if you're swapping records all the time, it can become quite laborious in a way.
No, totally. I've done that. That's a great thing. We would do that very often on a Friday night. That would be my Friday night for the last few years. Would be that,
Yeah.
Nice food and then maybe a couple of drinks, and you're just batting back and forth with music choices, and that's the thing with the streaming things. They do have suggestions that will maybe make you think, oh, well, actually that's a great record too, and
Well, that's how I discovered. I mean, I didn't. You don't discover the Stooges at the age of 12 years old necessarily, but I would be listening to, say, a Sex Pistols record and find out that they covered No Fun, and you think initially it's their song, and then of course you realise it isn't. It's a Stooges cover, and you find your way through it.
I think when I was a kid, if I had access, when you'd hear about music, you'd hear about bands, you would have no way of hearing them. You'd like hear about the Stooges. Yeah, you're right. You'd maybe hear a track on the radio, but then if you wanted to hear the album, well, it was impossible. You would have to either have a friend who had the album, or
maybe a cool record shop that you could go into and ask them to order it in, or something like that. Yeah. And sometimes we got into a lot of American stuff, hardcore and punk rock from America, and underground American music we were talking about earlier. And sometimes you'd have to send off for it.
Yeah.
Get a cassette in the post like a month later, and you'd almost forgotten you'd ordered it.
Yeah, that's right. You would hope that it was like what you were expecting, but yeah, with the streaming thing, you can actually. It is amazing. You can just listen to anything you want now, which is brilliant.
And
although apart from Troutmaster Replica, that's not on Spotify or any of the streaming services.
Isn't it? I've not actually searched for it. No,
for some reason there must be some sort of contractual legal thing that's stopping that being there. But yeah.
But it was before we were recording, as it were, I was talking to you about your writing and recording setup at home. You've got a little studio in your house now, like most people who make music, but describe what's your kind of process of demoing and writing.
Well, I mean, I actually I got into this thing. I was looking on YouTube, and I found this guy who was doing these instructional videos on GarageBand, on an iPad, and it kind of got me thinking, this is amazing. I'm going to give that a go, because there's something that's very instantaneous about. I think it's something about the tactile nature of it. You can actually you can bring up GarageBand or GarageBand for any American
GarageBand,
listeners. Just pull up a drum set and start hitting the pads, and it'll sort of quantize it, and you can create a beat very quickly, and then you can pull up a sort of bass and put in a little bass line. So it's, in terms of being creative, it's amazing to do all in this. This little tablet or whatever, and that stuff wasn't available when I was young. You would have maybe, if you're lucky, a tape recorder.
A four-track.
A four-track would be amazing if you could get that, but they were expensive then. Porta studios and that kind of thing. So it's great in terms of creativity for kids now that they have all this right there. If they have
and do you
a computer.
sort of write your classic writing a song on an acoustic guitar, and then quickly, if you've got something that you're happy with, record it in the home studio, send it to Raymond, that kind of thing?
Yeah, what I tend to do is I'll just use the phone. So I should say iPhone, or there are other phones, like whatever. But, I just use a phone with the microphone and that, put the idea down, and that's it, and then we'll get together in the studio. And we tend to not work it out before we get to the studio. That's maybe something we would have done in the past, but I personally like the idea of getting together and revealing the song on the day that you're going to record it,
Wow, yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just because I think...
And do you have the song fully worked out, middle eight, intros, outros? I tend
to have a kind of rough structure and hopefully a lyric. Sometimes not a lyric though, but, a melody for sure. But with the guys that I work with in the band, they're great players. Dave McGowan's an amazing bass player. Frank's a great drummer. Eros is really creative on keyboards, and Raymond's a great guitar player. It's like, so you work with people, you kind of get to trust them. I think years ago, I might have thought that, I've got all these ideas. I know how the song should, what the arrangement should be, what the guitar should do, what the keyboard should do. And I've realised that it's actually much better to just let people be expressive, because you'll end up with something that's much more interesting.
I wonder, on the opening track on the new album Endless Arcade Home, there's it's sort of 80% guitar solo, that song.
Yeah, there's lots of guitar.
Was that planned in advance?
It wasn't, it just kind of happened. I think it was one of those songs where, again, I came in with the idea and we started playing through it, but it just felt that it wanted to go on a bit longer.
Yeah.
And Raymond started soloing on the end, and so we kind of did that until we kind of, in fact, on the record, it just kind of peters out,
Yeah.
So we just played until we thought it had sort of come to an end, and then we kind of looked at each other and,
stopped.
Yeah, put the instruments down at that point. But for me, it's... I really like that now. Like I say, in the past, I was much more of a megalomaniac in terms of the production, and I've realised that I get more pleasure from working with a group of musicians and seeing what we can do collectively.
Well, that's being in a band, isn't it? I feel similar when I make music. I there are certain, I'm not going to say something, every now and again I feel this song should go in this direction, and you sort of put your foot down a little bit, but by and large I like the collaborative process.
I'm exactly the same. I think, like you say, sometimes you think, no, actually this part should definitely be like this, or this riff needs to be there, but other than that, you just play what you want, and so I like the collaborative nature of being in a band. It is a band. It's about the group of musicians playing together, and any group of musicians playing together will sound different than any other group. So that's the thing, that's the magic that you want to capture and create. And that sort of creative thing between, for us at the moment, it's 5 people is exciting.
Now, Jerry left the band fairly recently, and he was obviously one of the writers. Are Eros and Dave and everyone else contributing to writing?
Well, not at the moment, but that's, I think...
Potentially.
Potentially anything, but we're kind of open for anything. For the longest time in the band, it was myself, Raymond and Jerry, who'd been in the band a long time, all 3 of us from the start. We were the writers. It just kind of settled that way. It wasn't defined at the start. It was just kind of we settled into this arrangement of having 4 songs each on every album. And that's just the way it was. That's what we did. But then, like I said, the lineup's changed a bit, and we have brought this guy in, Eros Childs, who is a great songwriter.
I mean, you kind of want him to bring in a tune every now and again. He's got some great melodies in his head. Yeah,
he definitely does. So, I mean, like I say, I think we're now at the stage where we think, well, let's just try anything. Whatever works is fine.
Yeah.
There aren't really any rules at all in this. No. You don't have to be, to fit other people's perceptions of what you are. You can do what you want.
Yeah. Just going back to the whiskey.
Yeah.
Which is obviously lubricating the conversation. So I'm absolutely. This is my favourite so far. A rustic dance, and I can see your reasoning behind the song as well. I haven't seen the Wicker Man for a while, but
me neither. Actually, it did make me think when I was thinking about the song. I was thinking I have to watch that movie again soon. But and obviously this is the Highlands Tourist, so we're kind of I guess that's up in the north, isn't it? Or set up in the north.
Yes, yeah.
I think it wasn't filmed there, was it? Was it Plockton? Maybe they filmed a lot of it in Plockton.
Oh, is that right? I love Plockton. It's got kind of strange microclimate. I'm adding a little water.
The little palm trees there, so I think you can see some palm trees there. I'll do the same. Add some water to...
a rustic dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1973, the Wicker Man.
That's lovely. Yeah, I got a little bit caught in the back of my throat there. I'll get you. What's that? 62.1% volume will get you.
Yeah.
When you're...
delicious, absolutely delicious. That's great. I'm really pleased to hear that, Teenage Fanclub are a sort of ever evolving.
Well, I think we are, but at the same time, we're still pretty much what we've always done. We're a kind of song-based band, I think with bands, I've always said this: you kind of just play to your strengths, So we're quite good at doing harmonies. We can do that, and we can, in terms of the guitar arrangement, we can do things that are quite interesting with that. So you just kind of try and work on that and hone that and see it as being your craft and your technique in that craft, because songwriting's a craft, right? So it's like anything. People get better at making pots when they're potters. It's like whatever you think, you could develop techniques or whatever, and it's no different than being in a band. You do the same thing.
Yeah,
you play to your strengths.
Shall we move on to dram number 4?
I think we should. Lemons on the Lawn.
Oh yes.
Well, here we go.
So that's obviously giving us citrus notes from the title alone. It's a Speyside.
Yeah, this is light and delicate. It's a Speyside, which I like Speyside. So this is
distilled in September 1997. Wow, this is old.
Well, that is old. Wow, 22 years.
When bottled, 22 years.
When bottled, 22 years when bottled. Yeah.
Again, ex-bourbon hogshead refill cask.
Yeah.
And a Speyside. Slightly less alcoholic, this one. It's 57.8. Let's go in. Lemons on the Lawn.
Okay, here we go. There it goes.
Yeah. It's marked sort of much lighter.
I was just going to say exactly. It's much lighter, isn't it, than the others?
And it has a much lighter nose
it's very
as well.
mild, isn't it?
Let's read some of...
but you can definitely get the citrus from it.
Yeah. Summery aromas of lush meadows and green grass merged with sweetly scented jasmine flowers as lemon and grapefruit brought a citrus twist. Fruity notes then developed into pineapple, melon and strawberry before vanilla suggested chocolate and custard. Yeah,
you can see all those things there, can't you? Really, definitely the sort of fruitiness in it and the lightness.
The nose is the lightest so far, and this is the light and delicate flavour profile, so it all makes sense.
And it is very light.
I sometimes try a flavour profile and I find that even though a lot of the tasting notes will be similar, it's actually a bit harsher or a bit more of a punch than, say, a sort of young and sprightly or a sweet, fruity and mellow.
Yeah.
But this one definitely fits the flavour.
It definitely does, doesn't it? Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, this is right up my street in terms of a whiskey. This is what I like. This is
oh, really? Yeah.
This is where I would go. Yeah.
And it's definitely citrusy when on the first sip. Mm-hmm. Now you've gone for a stone cold classic for your music choice on this one. I think
it was because of the lightness. So I chose the Kinks Autumn Almanac. Okay, yeah. And because there's a lightness in the song that I think just the whiskey reminded me of that. Just the sort of lightness, the airiness of it. Even the delivery, Ray Davies' delivery. There's a great clip of them doing Autumn Almanac on Top of the Pops, and it's like just they look so laid back. It's brilliant. And Ray Davies definitely has that lightness in terms of being a songwriter. I mean, I love him. I think he's like an amazing songwriter.
Me too. I think a lot of people say legend and genius a lot in modern parlance, and quite often I don't think the people they're talking about are legends or geniuses. But I'd have to say he's
for sure.
Yeah,
a lyrical and musical genius in the sense that there's a lot of complexity and richness to the to both of those things. In terms of him as a songwriter, he's a great lyricist. But actually, when you listen to a lot of the songs and things that we are very familiar with, if you listen to the arrangement of Autumn Almanac, it's really unusual. The time signature's a bit off. The choruses and verses don't fit in the way that you would expect them to. And that's actually quite common in his songwriting, But somehow he seems to make these unusual arrangements work and seem very natural.
Effortless. So that's the thing. And it's like Paul McCartney. How many tunes has that man had in his head? I mean, they seem like perfect songs to me.
They do. It's just having a gift for that creation of melody over. Again, Ray Davies, because the Ray Davies things are. Like I said, the chord structures are quite unusual very often, and actually it's 'cause as a musician, you like to play other people's songs, you like to learn a song, and I find it really difficult to play Ray Davies songs because for one, he sings the lower key register than I normally do, but the keys are unusual in the songs, very often. And
is it sort of time for a capo?
It could be a bit of that, but it seems to me it's going the other way. It's they're kind of lower than the E, or whatever. But I think he writes a lot on piano, or he did back then. But like again, the imagery in this song's amazing. He's great at capturing the world of being a working class person, and Britain, certainly in the 60s, at that period when that seems to be like he really captured what it was to be working class then,
and there's a real cynicism to his lyric writing in some songs as well. Like
the other side of Ray Davies is a very, very dark person, I think, and there's I know he had mental health issues and whether he had all sorts of things happen in his life. I think he was shot, wasn't he?
Really, was he?
And he was living in Atlanta. Atlanta was he? I think it was in Atlanta he was living. I'm not quite sure, but he was shot. A very complicated guy.
This is on the album Something Else. 1967. It's seen as their finest or one of their finest albums. Is it your favourite?
It's not. I think like many other people who really like the Kinks, I think it would be Village Green Preservation Society.
That's the one for me too. And it's funny because I sort of discovered that maybe in the 90s. Probably, I think I'd heard and enjoyed Park Life by Blur. And I kept seeing, rightfully so, people sort of comparing it to the Village Green Preservation Society.
You can see when people would make that comparison.
Oh, definitely. I mean, melodically, songwriting-wise, but also conceptually. And so I went back, discovered it, and was completely blown away. And again blown away that it wasn't successful at the time.
Amazing. I think there was a thing before. I'm not quite sure if this is totally correct, but I think it's something like this, that they were banned from playing in America. They were stuck in London or whatever, and they wrote. I think it's a kind of quintessentially English album. It's about it being English. It's about But
again, it's cynical though. It's almost like it's got an arched eyebrow.
There is that because also in he will also sing a track like Victoria. He's sort of railing against the fact that people were all these sort of working class people died in the First World War, sort of unnecessarily or whatever, or unnecessarily, sorry. And so there is so he's sort of celebrating. I would say English culture primarily, but also denigrates it in other ways in terms of what you think about something like Victoria, which is talking about the waste of the or the lost generation of in the First World War or whatever. But he's an interesting character. Here's a little funny side note. When I was a kid, I was a baby, pretty much, a couple of years old, and I only found this out 10 years ago. So my folks were in Blackpool, and they went to a gig, and they took me along with them, and it was Tom Jones, but the opening band were the Kinks.
Wow.
So I think you're talking 1968. And I think they were playing the songs from the Village Green. I mean, I can't remember it. I wish I could remember it, But that's, my dad told me a couple of years later. Oh yeah, we took you. It was the Kinks. It was. Well, he said it was Tom Jones and the Kinks, and and I was thinking, what? Wait a minute, what? Yeah. And he was like, no, it was like whatever, Pleasure Beach or whatever, And yeah, so my first gig was the Kinks. Village Green
Without knowing it, yeah.
Village Green Preservation Society Kinks. I can't remember it at all.
Oh, it's a shame, isn't
The next one was the Wombles.
Which you can remember every second of.
Which was still pretty good.
Yeah. And the man behind the Wombles, Mike Batt, in terms of the music, just great songwriter.
Amazing, really great songs actually. So I found out later too that Chris Spedding, punk rock was the sort of punk rock guitar player, was a Womble on the live shows. So I think I saw Chris Spedding play at those shows in 1975 or 6, whenever it was.
Wow, 74. You know what? You learn something every day, and I've just learned that Chris Spedding was a Womble.
He was a Womble, yeah. He played in the Wombles. Yeah.
How's the whiskey going down?
Very, very nice, actually. Yeah.
I mean, they are the finest whiskies known to man at the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I mean, this is why we come here.
Yeah.
Are Teenage Fanclub a whiskey drinking band?
We are, to varying degrees, but yeah, we, I would say out of the band, Raymond is probably the biggest whiskey aficionado. Him and his wife Sharon are both like whiskey, and have a good selection of whiskies. If you go to their place for whatever, they'll give you a nice dram. I think we bands have the rider, don't they?
Yep.
I think we don't necessarily have a bottle on the rider, but we take a bottle on tour with us, So because obviously you do the show, and after the show you stay in the hotel, so you always end up in someone's room. So maybe we'll get back to the room, get the bottle out, we'll have a dram, and you have the post-mortem of the show or whatever. Right. Well, that was terrible or whatever. You do that. So that's So we do. Yeah, we'll have it.
Yeah, I mean, what's it now? 32 years as
something
a band?
like that. Yeah, definitely over 30. Yeah,
yeah.
89. So yeah, got 32. Yeah.
Were you quite rock and roll, but like in the early days? I mean, Wild Men on tour. Not without what goes on tour stays on tour.
No. I think I don't think we were particularly crazy, but we held our own. Let's say that. we had our moments. But we've never been. I think we always thought that if you chuck a hotel room, So if you chuck a TV out a hotel room window, then somebody's going to have to clean that up, and it won't be the people who own the hotel.
It's funny. I interviewed and I know her a little bit as well, Katie Tunstall, and she worked in hotels, and she says, we all. Do mad things from time to time, but I am determined never to destroy a hotel room or do anything like that. Because I've had to clear up after people.
Yeah, I like what she's saying. I think she's right, and that is you do have to think about it. Somebody's going to get in. It's not the person who owns a hotel or
or the corporation or whatever.
Paid the least amount of money as an employee of the hotel. They've got to get in and clean up your mess. So no, it's But yeah, so we've never trashed hotel rooms, But we probably have left a couple in, in
states of disrepair.
Yeah, I think we have.
I'm going to add a tiny bit of water to the lemons on the lawn just for my last sip, and then I think we should move on to dram number 5.
Sounds good. I said autumn almanac. I think it's more for its lightness because, of course, autumn isn't summer, and citrus would make you think of summer, but
But then you're often like eating fruit and making jams. I certainly am. I love making jam now. That's how rock and roll I am these days.
I didn't know you made jam, but you have to give me some jam, Vic.
Yeah, I make a good chili jam, right, and my girlfriend and I do a sort of apple rosehip bramble jelly type thing, which is
I like the sound of that. Yeah,
and that's an autumn. Fruit,
It's post summer. You've got the fruit off the trees. And what are you going to do with it?
Yeah. We're growing chilies at the moment.
Oh,
as well.
Amazing! Yeah.
Anyway, I absolutely loved that one. I still think out of the 5, A Rustic Dance is the one for me so far. But we move on to our last dram and our last piece of music. Mm-hmm. Moving on to our 5th and final dram,
Around the World and Back.
Yes.
Which is a single malt Indian whiskey, distilled the 31st of January 2016. So it's and it's been aged for 4 years. The cask is a refill ex-bourbon barrel, and it's Indian.
Yes, I've never had an Indian dram before.
Me neither.
And we haven't had one on the podcast either. So this is really interesting. Now to my shame, didn't even know that they made single malt whiskey in India. I knew Japan was, you know, have a few distilleries.
I've had some nice Japanese single malts, but I guess it shouldn't be a surprise. You can make it anywhere, can't you? I suppose,
of course.
really, you know. But you know,
so it's off the tasting card around the world and back. Sweet and spicy is the profile. So some of the comparisons are gingerbread, garam masala. Funnily enough, hot cross buns, cinnamon Danish, balsamic strawberries, Thai sweet chili crisps, which is great. And on the card it says, a sweet fragrance filled the air that gave the impression of hibiscus flowers, sandalwood, cinnamon and marsala spices. Roses entwined around oak trees as rhubarb suggested an earthiness with tobacco and chai tea chests. Which is
Thai sweet chili crisps are great because I could, when you said I was sort of sniffing the whiskey and I could smell that.
Oh yeah, I can smell it too. There's dare I say almost a sort of slight garlickiness to it. It's not overpowering in any way, but there's that sort of salty spiciness.
Yeah, there is. It's very different to everything that we've tasted before.
Oh yeah, I mean the nose is completely different from. I mean, you know, sometimes you can have a completely different flavour profile, but the nose is quite similar, and then when you actually taste it,
but the nose is very distinct in this, isn't it? Yeah.
Right, I'm going in.
Wow.
Right, well, this one stands out a mile, doesn't it?
Really dry. There's really dryness in that. You know, it's like I've got that. And then it just, again, is that to do with the alcohol?
It's 59.9%.
Yeah, just wanted, it felt like it dried up really quickly in my tongue there, but like
If you I remember trying green chartreuse, and it was so alcoholic that you could feel it almost evaporating. On your tongue, and sometimes you get. I can see what you mean. It is a sort of a dryness to it. Yeah. Now you've gone for an Ennio Morricone track to pair with this one.
Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to go. Well, I think again go back to the the spicy and sweetness. The track is I don't know. It just suggested that track. It seems to be that the track is quite spicy and sweet. Mm-hmm. But there's also something about that track. It's kind of. I mean, people think of Ennio Morricone and his soundtrack music, but this is kind of it's still an instrumental track, but it's quite light and poppy.
Yeah.
In fact, it's almost like a kind of indie band.
I know exactly what you mean.
If they were an instrumental indie band.
Well, I didn't know this track. I know Ennio Morricone's music quite well. I mean, I'm a huge fan, and a big regret of mine is that he performed with an orchestra. I think he conducted an orchestra and was touring just a few years ago, and they played at the Usher Hall.
Our friend Douglas went to see that, and I didn't go, but I'd love to have seen that. Amazing.
I wish I'd gone, because sadly, of course, he passed away.
Yeah.
July 2020.
I mean, I think the Maestro is amazing.
Yeah.
Incredible. But this is interesting because the song is like it's driven by an acoustic guitar.
It's a 2-chord chugger, isn't it?
And it's an acoustic guitar playing the riff, which people will hear when they hear the track. But yeah, it's kind of really really simple. But so I'm not entirely sure why this. There's something maybe I don't know. This to me. Maybe the whiskey.
It's La Moda.
La Moda.
From the film La Donna Invisibile, or The Invisible Woman. He says probably in terrible attempted Italian there, but
well, I think maybe this was kind of unexpected. The flavour of this whiskey.
it sort of just brought to mind.
Yeah, just.
Is this a track you'd been listening to sort of fairly recently?
Well, no, do you know, I've listened to this track over the years as one that I've liked. I kind of like, so I love Morricone's cinematic stuff, but I really like these kind of simplistic pop things that he does. And again, this is just, he probably knocked this off in half an hour.
It's got little sort of organ and brass kind of
there's little motifs towards it, kind of playing around the main melody or whatever, but
do you know what, I funnily enough, we talked about Home off the new album. That end section with Raymond solo, which I love that. There was something about this that reminded me of that. I mean, it's not the same rhythm or anything like that, but it's a kind of, because by that point in the song Home, you've got to a kind of like, it's basically two chords basically,
Yeah.
rhythmically,
Yeah.
while Raymond noodles on
Yeah,
top, brilliantly, by the way.
Oh,
and
great, thank you. Yeah.
I love that, and it never goes where I expect it to go melodically. Yeah. But it's kind of a bit like this. In a way.
It is like this.
Do you see what I mean by that?
I totally see what you mean by that. Yeah, I totally see that. Yeah, it's I mean, it's actually, I think that it's very, very complex, the flavour of this, actually, for me. The other ones have been kind of easier to pin down in a way, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? I think there's lots of different things in this.
Have you, slightly random question, but seeing as we're drinking an Indian single malt, have you played in India?
Never played in India, no.
Wow.
I know of some people that have, but I think the gigs are hard to come by because they're generally would be promoted by the British Council. I think there was a thing where they would put on gigs, so some people that I've worked with have played in India, but no, I've never been there, and not even as a tourist or whatever,
Right,
but certainly not to play.
But you're open to it?
Absolutely, yeah. It'd be
Should
amazing.
An Indian music promoter be listening?
It would be incredible,
right
yeah. I would love to go and play some shows there. But
I have absolutely no idea what Teenage Fanclub's profile would be in a place like that. But you'd like to think that there's a lot of people in India.
I think that's the thing about the internet that has been, is that people, you do find out that you have fans, in all sorts of places, but I think for us, we've always, and it is also kind of random where you as a band you'll do well. Japan, we do well there. It's amazing. It's great. Norway is good for us, Spain is great for us, Other places not so much, but it's just funny that I'm not sure what that's to do with whether a record has just been promoted well in a area, a region at some point, or whatever.
Radio picks up on
that kind of thing,
or,
But yeah, I think the other thing is too. I've still loved the idea of going to a new place. And I'm trying to think of the last time we did that. Well, we played in Seoul, but that's going back
South Korea.
Yeah, going back a few years, but that was amazing. But so if
I would be interested. What's the audience reaction? Do they go absolutely crazy?
Again, it's
jumping
great.
around?
I think because of the internet, people are aware of the music, so you will hope you will have fans in different places, but we've never played in Russia but any of those kind of sort of ex-Soviet Union states, we get Latvia. We've never done any shows there. Never been in Africa at all. I mean, there aren't many bands that played in Africa from European bands that have played in Africa. Which is.
People say, I don't know if this is correct. You'll know far better than me, but Scottish audiences are famously buoyant and lively, and tell you if they love you or if they hate you. But I've also heard that Mexico has got a brilliant
we've never
audience.
played in Mexico. I've been personally in Tijuana, across the border. We've never played a show in Mexico City. But yeah, I believe that Mexican audiences are amazing. Brazil, we have played in Brazil, and that's incredible. That's an amazing place. I think it's like, actually the musical history and the heritage of that country is amazing. The bossa nova thing, unbelievable.
I know, I love bossa nova as
Chico
well.
Buarque, amazing music. But yeah, so it was great playing there. Would be great to play more South American countries. Chile would be great, whatever, But
I know Teenage Fanclub's an ongoing concern, as we've been discussing, the way the band is evolving and changing as time goes on. But if you look back at your 32, 33 year career, is there a particular time when you just went, that will never be better? That was just like... I'm just thinking that breakthrough moment around about Bandwagon-esque, Spin Magazine voting it best album of the year above Nevermind and Out of Time, R.E.M.
The thing of that is and I should make people aware that our album was voted album of the year by Spin Magazine.
Yeah.
But I should also make listeners aware that the commissioning editor or the reviews editor at Spin Magazine was a guy called Stephen Daly, who was the drummer in Orange Juice, who were a Glasgow band even. Yeah. And he may have had some influence in that. I don't know.
Don't put yourself down. He listened to all those records and went, Glasgow band. But
no, I think, highlights of, we've done some great things. I mean, there's still, I think think for us, we still feel great and very privileged to be making music now and making albums. It's great, you know. But we toured with Nirvana on the Nevermind tour in Europe, and that was great to watch that phenomenon, you know, be part of it in our very small way, being the opening act and no one watching you, but and we got to know those guys pretty well.
Yeah, and I believe you were Nirvana famously covered 3-4 tracks by the Vaselines.
Yeah,
and you know Eugene and Francis very well.
Yeah,
but you were at the meeting of the time when Kurt Cobain met.
I was
Eugene
the other person
Kelly.
in the room when Eugene and Kurt met. Yeah, and we gone through the Nirvana were playing in Edinburgh, and asked the Vaselines if they would play with them, whatever. So they reformed for this show, and we drove through in the back of a van. Well, certainly me and Eugene were in the back of the van, and we got to the venue, and we sort of walk into the venue, and so we meet Chris Novoselic. He's there, and I remember him being this very tall man, and he says, "Oh, hey, how you guys doing?" And "Oh yeah, I'm Eugene," and whatever. He said, "Oh yeah, Eugene. Kurt's really looking forward to meeting you. He's upstairs in the dressing room." So me and Eugene toured off to the dressing room, and we knock on the door and open the door, and it was when Kurt was wearing that really heavy eyeliner, the black eyeliner. And so we open the door, and Kurt turns around and he sees Eugene, and he says to Eugene, "Oh man, I can't believe I'm meeting Eugene Kelly from the Vaselines." Just a very small thing, but I remember that moment. I was like, "Oh, there you go." Yeah. And Eugene's a very self-deprecating guy, and
very funny guy.
Yeah. And but it was just a great thing, and of course it was just a moment at that time. You were not thinking, you're unaware of what's going to happen, and But anyway,
this is the thing. I mean, I was lucky enough, and it always impresses younger bands when I meet them. But I was lucky enough to see Nirvana 4 times.
Wow.
Twice in Edinburgh at the Carlton Studios.
Yeah.
So
that was one of those shows with the Carlton Studios. It must have been one of those.
Yeah.
But the Vaselines one was the Carlton Studios.
Yeah. It was, yeah. And who's the other band on Shonen Knife, I think.
Shonen Knife, yeah.
Were the other band supporting.
Yeah.
And the first time I saw Nirvana, they had L7 supporting, which was a great bill.
We toured with them too. We played in Europe with L7. We did a European tour with L7.
Oh, that must have been great fun.
That was good fun. They were great, nice people. I've got another small anecdote on this, but this, you talk about Shonen Knife playing with Nirvana. I was staying in Glasgow at the time when I was in the West End, and I was walking across the bridge at Kelton Bridge or whatever, and and a van pulled over. I was kind of just walking down the street. This van screeched over, and it was Nirvana and Shonen Knife that were in the van. They jumped out. Kurt jumped out of the van. Ah!
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow, fucking hell!"
We can bleed that.
We can bleed that. But yeah, it was they were they must have saw me and like that.
There's me being lucky enough to have seen Nirvana a few times, but there can't be many people that would have Nirvana stop their van, jump out and accost them on the street. So that's
there you go. I know.
But the thing is, going back to what we're saying, it's like I'm sure.
That's the thing I hadn't thought about for a long time, because it was a mad thing that happened one afternoon in Glasgow.
When I was watching that band, we loved them. We loved Mudhoney. We loved Tad. We loved all of the sort of Seattle and grunge kind of Washington State kind of bands, and. But we didn't think they were going to reinvent rock music, or they were going to have the impact that they've had.
Yeah.
Obviously on the Nevermind tour, you must have watched it all. It was a phenomenon.
It was exactly a phenomenon, and you could really, and it was amazing to witness that and be around it. But I think it was a bigger thing for the Americans in a way, because I think they kind of
they hadn't had their punk.
They hadn't had it. Like Sonic, they took the year punk broke. I think Sonic Youth put that video up.
Yeah.
And so that was their breakthrough. Whereas it happened here in the late 70s.
Yeah, it's a shame, because the Americans, I suppose, invented punk, whether it be the 60s stuff like the Sonics and so on, the Wailers and all those noisy bands, and then obviously Ramones, Television, Blondie, happening in CBGBs, that whole scene, Talking Heads and so on. but it was the UK stuff that broke through and invented the word in a way.
Because the Beatles were punk rock to Americans at that time, in terms of they kind of shook it up, or that kind of, what they were doing and what other bands like the Beatles were doing, took it to America and and shook up there. But yeah, it's amazing. It's kind of been batted back and forth. But
like Teenage Fanclub, an extraordinary career and some incredible records. Grand Prix being my personal all-time favourite, but I mean, there's just so many great tracks on all of the albums. And yeah, just now in a different stage of your life and your career and so on, you always strike me as someone, although I know that some of the lyrics on the last album, the current album, are quite dark and introspective and so on, you strike me as confident and happy within yourself and within the band. And
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think we still enjoy, as a band, as a collection of musicians or whatever, we enjoy playing together. It's good fun. We were practicing yesterday. We still call it practicing, I think.
I do too.
Yeah, it's like
rehearsing sounds too grandiose.
Yeah, it does. It does a bit. Yeah, but it's still just nice getting together and making music. It's still really thrilling, and fun. And yeah, we're playing soon. We're doing shows soon, and it's been a long time since we've been able to do that.
Yeah,
and it has been. Personally, I've really missed that. It's like because it is kind of part of who I am. This is it's what I do, and so it's going to be great to be out there playing again. But yeah, I think for us too, I think it has to be enjoyable. It can't be. It can't be
work.
No, it can't be work, and I think we all have to be in a good place in terms of our relationship with each other. But we are. It's all good, and I think we feel privileged to be still making music. I really do.
Well, I personally think we should leave it there, because you and I could talk about music and whiskey all night.
I'm sure we absolutely could, Vic.
We're gonna put all the tracks on a Spotify playlist for everyone to listen to them in their entirety. So all of the podcasts and all of the music choices. So it's going to be a very odd playlist, because there'll be lots of different music choices. But I think that will just add to the spice of it. The whiskies have been delicious. So we've had Gang of Four, we've had Captain Beefheart, we've had Magnet and Paul Giovanni, we've had the Kinks, and finishing off with Ennio Morricone. Norman, an absolute pleasure. Lovely to see you, and lovely to have a few drams with you.
Thanks for having me, Vic. Thank you. Likewise.
Thanks for checking out Malts and Music. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, we are building a playlist of all the tracks discussed. You can find that on Spotify. And for all your whiskey needs, unfiltered, Whisky Talk, and so much more, head along to the website smws.com. I'm Vic Galloway. This is the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and I'll speak to you in a month's time.